Finding take profit zones. Now again, this has been covered in a few videos before. However, I thought I'd make a separate one solely for the purpose of helping you guys understand and getting that further understanding that you may need if you're still confused on this topic. So a couple rules to go by, and they might sound familiar. If trading US session, look for other US session highs and lows to target. This could mean going back a week. It could also mean going back 3 years to find a US session high or low that is suitable for you to target. If trading London session, look for other London sessions. And the same rule applies. It could be a week, 3 years, 2 months, whichever looks more suitable, and we'll go over that in this video as well. If there's a level of high resistance / support, then that can be used as a target also. I will go through that today, but the basic concept of support and resistance, if there's many spots where price has stopped at, for example, if we just do a quick one right here, we can see that this point here is a high level of support. We tapped in, rejected, 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 tapped in, rejected. And again, it was used as support because we broke above, tapped in and pushed up, broke above, tapped in, pushed up. So it's a very strong level. And this would be an example of if you were in a trade, you could use this as a target. You don't have to aim past it. For example, let's say in this scenario, if we use the right one, forgive me, let's say you've entered, let's just say here, stops are above here. Instead of just targeting the US session low, then you could just target the resistance in this case. So that's what I mean by that. And this applies for all pairs. So it doesn't, it's US 30, it's gold, it's GBP, JPY, Euro USD. You can use it on any. So we're just going to go through a few examples with this one. Now with stops, we're basically just going to go through a trade. I didn't cover US 30 in the stop losses video, so we're just going to quickly cover that. We're going to go through a trade here, and not only we're going to cover stops, we're going to cover take profit levels as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as you can see, we're trading US 30. When we're trading US 30, we have simple rules. We mark out the high and the low of the previous session. I'm not interested in any other session when it comes to US 30. And all we are basically doing, and feel free to mark this out for yourself if you ever get confused. We're just looking for a 5-minute reaction from one of these. And then if we get, for example, let's just say price comes to the bottom, we would trade it to the top. So with US 30, you're trading from zone to zone. If price opens inside this area, you will be trading from whichever zone you're trading off. For example, if we open at the bottom, my take profit is going to be the top of the US session high here. If we opened at the top, then quite simply, my take profit would be at the bottom of the zone. So for US 30, if you want to write it down, for US 30, if we open inside the zone, whichever side price gives us our entry signal at, we target the opposite end. If we open at the top, we're going to target the bottom of the zone. If we open at the bottom of the zone and we get our 5-minute engulfing signal, then we're going to take it to the top of the zone. Now, if price were to open outside of this zone, this is when you can use your high levels of support, or you can use previous US session highs and lows. So all you do is go on the 30-minute, you say it's a small target, but for example, you would target this high here. You could also go and find, and it always helps for me personally, to find high levels of support and resistance, is to sort of scrunch the chart, and you can see already that support here, we've got a high level of support, we've got a high level of resistance here, and these are sort of the zones that you can target. So any place where a price has hit multiple times, for example, there's a perfect one here, price keeps reacting and bouncing off this level, and it rejects, and then basically rejects again. And it's as simple as that. So again, if you want to find another one, rejects, nearly comes down, rejects a little bit, then we break through. And then, as you can see, when we broke through, it then used it as a resistance and pushed it down. Instead of a support, which it was turning it into, like such, we finally broke down, and this is what it gave us, and therefore this would be your high level that you could target. So if there is a zone, in this example there isn't, but if there is a zone like this in your target or that you can target, then I would say go for that. There's no point, let's say we're in this trade right here. So let's say, for example, we're in this one. We're in this trade here, and we see that there is a high level of support from the past. For example, tapped in here about 5 times and respected it. Then we broke above and we used it as a support. Knowing this level of support right here, I could then use that as a target. Instead of me just getting into this trade, for example, I love when it does that. It's really fantastic. And me just wanting to target, not that we would, but target all the way down here, right? So then I could target the support level, and it saves the headache of trying to basically stay in the trade, have the headache of staying in the trade and wait until 5 o'clock all the time to close out on half a full trade. So you can target support and resistance levels, and in US 30 you can target the highs and lows of the current zone if you open and get an entry within this zone. Any trade in this zone, feel free to target the top or the bottom, obviously depending on which side you get the entry from. Okay, so that's the general rule of thumb for US 30. We are just going to play through the trade, and I'll do the same on either silver or gold, for example, or I might even do a currency pair. So if we play price on here, we wait, we get our tap in, and immediately we get our signal, right? Stop losses are the same for the previous video. On US 30, you're either going to put them ideally above the zone, definitely above the wick, and definitely above the structure point that gets formed on the top of these entry signals. So it's the exact same concept for US 30. If anyone was curious, it's the same thing. You put it above the zones, you put it above the wicks, and you put it above the structure point. And your target, as I've said before, you'd simply target the bottom of the zone because we've opened inside this zone. Then we will simply going to target the bottom of it because we opened and got our entry signal at the top of the zone. On the flip side, like I say, if we opened above this zone, we would either go in the past and would target a US high or a US low or a high level of support and resistance. So if we play price on here just for the fun of playing around, as we can see we got stopped out here. So maybe that would be a case of journaling and be like, well, did it need to be higher? In my opinion, no it didn't. It was one of those cases of we just got waked out. We can see after that price started to push down, but it got to 5 o'clock and you would have been halfway through the trade anyway. But that is an example of using the stop, unfortunately getting wicked out, but you can see how price reacts off these levels and you can target then the bottom of the zone. So that was an example in US 30. We're going to move on to now doing one in London session, and the same exact rules apply. You can use previous London highs and lows, or you can use a big support or resistance level. So if we go in today as we're going to be taking the trade, for example, let's just mark out this zone here, and we mark out this zone here, the highs and lows. basically all I want to see, because we're already in this zone, potentially a retest and a buy up to the top of the zone. Again, if we open inside the zone, it works the same on US 30, and it will be the same rule that applies over cross when we go to the US session. If we open inside the zone and we have a bias to push us up to the top of the zone, for example, then we can target the top of the zone. Same if we were in a sells bias but we opened at the top of the zone, we could target the bottom of the zone. So whenever we open inside a zone that we've marked out for the day, we can target the other end of the zone as a take profit target. And again, same rules apply. If we break above, for example, let me just select the tool. If we break above, tap in, then my next target would be something either high level of resistance, which we can see here, multiple taps into this zone and rejects, broke above, used it as support multiple times, and then broke below it, and we've been trading below it ever since. So this is the sort of level you can target. Ideally, it matches up with a London high. You could also, if you wanted to, target the London low, but then that's when you decide whether the risk to reward was worth it for taking the trade. So the rules of thumb are basically the same thing. And again, if we broke below, then we'd look for either a high level of support below that we could use to target as a take profit, or we'd use, for example, zones like this, which is obviously a previous London session low that we can target. So if we play price on here, we just remove this arrow, we head to the 5 minute, see if we can get an entry candle going on. And we have our engulfing candle. I don't know what you guys will call this if you've looked at the 5 minute entry sheet. But again, stop losses, have them below a previous structure point, which would be this little number right here. Definitely below the zone in this case, but I'd definitely like to have it a little bit below this area here, just in case we do try get wicked out. Then hopefully we've covered for that. You're not all, even if you say to yourself, okay, I've covered to get wicked out, obviously there's no telling what the market will actually do. So the wick could be a little bit longer than expected. That's not to say you move your stop loss. That's just to say, unfortunately, you got unlucky for that day. As you saw in the previous example, when we were trying to do a US 30 example, we just got wicked out. And it's just what happens. So basically, because we've opened inside the zone, all I'm going to do is target the top of the zone. And now, fortunate for me, price just pushed up. So you'd have your stops below here. In terms of targets, like I say, we're opened in the zone. We opened at the bottom of the zone. I can target the top of the zone, and it's as simple as that. So we're going to go into a US session example. I'm going to try and find one that opens outside of the zone, just to kind of tick off all boxes in a sense. So coming to US session, then we can see we've started outside of the zone. So what are we going to be looking for? Simply a tap back into this zone, a retest back up, or a break into this zone, a tap back in, and then our target would simply be the bottom of the zone, because obviously we're already in the zone at that point, which gives us an easy target, as we can just target the bottom of the zone. I mean, it's all pretty standard, but like I say, if it opens above the zone and it respects the top of the zone and we're open above, that's when it gets a little bit more technical, where you have to find the targets, and it's not just straightforward as taking it down to the bottom of the zone. Right? So without further ado, let us get on with it. Let's see, do we get that all important tap in? Yes, we do, and we get the engulfing. So we get the engulfing candle, which is fantastic. So what lies to us next is if we go find some targets. So what do we have? We see where price is here, so we're not going to mark down this low here because that would be pointless. Our next target could either be here, or if we find a strong point of resistance, and if we use our technique here, we can quite clearly see there is a big level of resistance if I could draw properly, that would be fantastic. But there is a strong level of resistance here. Rejected, 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 broke above, held, broke under, rejected, came up, held, 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 broke under, held, 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 held. You get the point. I'm just going to sound like a robot. So therefore, this is a level of support that we can use and take to the upside. It's a bit further up than I would have liked. So we can also find this point here where we keep rejecting multiple times. As you can see, rejected, 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 broke under, used it as support, resistance, sorry, and then came down. So this again is another zone that we can use as a target. Ideally, I want to be looking at this US high. It depends on the risk to reward that will be given at this point, but actually that looks to be okay. So if we get in and using our rules, we're below the zone and we're definitely below the wicks. Always allow for the spreads, of course, and then we can just target. We're going to target this US high, but it wouldn't be bad taking profits at this level either, at this level of resistance that we found on the chart earlier. And then if we play price forward here, we see we came and we reacted to this level of resistance. So these levels do hold value, and they are something to just be a little bit aware of. But they're easy enough to find. Just find points where price taps in, taps in, taps in, taps in, taps in, and rejects from. Right, I mean, another example, I mean, it's on a smaller scale, it's on the 5 minute, but it would be this one right here. Tap in, reject, tap in, reject, tap in, reject. And it would be the same on the, if we're looking at buy side, really. I mean, we come down here, reject, reject, broke through, used as support, and then came down to this zone, and then pushed right past it. But because it's on the 5 minute, it's not as strong as a 30-minute zone that would have this sort of pattern going on. So therefore, it's not that big of a worry. But let's see if we just hit our take profit here. It's too late anyway. But you could sort of see how we just continue to hold this level of support. So it's always important just to be aware of them and mark them down, and they can be used as targets as well. So you can use them to your advantage, but the general rule is that we can use support and resistance levels as targets for any pair. We use, if we're in London session, we can use previous London session highs and lows. If we're in US session, we can use US session highs and lows from however many years ago, or from last week, or from yesterday. It does not matter, but for all of them, just make sure you can target support and resistance levels. Not a problem. And if we open inside the zone, as I've shown in the previous London example, if we open inside of it, we can just simply target the other side of the zone. So they're normally the easiest trades, and it saves you going to having to look for targets. But if you open above the zone, get that tap in, and push, let's say, to the upside, then you'd have to go and find either resistance levels or previous, in this example, US session highs or lows. And that is the concept. So a lot of this is going to take a lot of practice. If you're struggling on support levels, again, it's just a case of looking at the market and showing up every day and understanding what you're looking at. I mean, like you saw there, it does become second nature. If you are struggling with that, it will become second nature as long as you keep doing it and you keep showing up every day and you actually are learning when you show up, right? So, again, I can do more videos on that. If you'd like to see support and resistance videos, I can do those as well. I'm here to help you guys as much as you're here to help me, right? So hopefully that helped. Hopefully that cleared some things up in terms of targets. But thank you so much for watching.